I woke up to the sound of silence, the kind of silence that tells you something is wrong. Normally, my mornings at the lake started with the soft lap of water against the old wooden pilings of the bridge, the hum of frogs hidden in the reeds, and the occasional distant splash of a fish breaking the surface. But that morning, all I heard was stillness. I threw on a pair of boots, grabbed my coffee, and headed down to the water. That bridge wasn't just some structure sitting over the lake. It was my sanctuary, my slice of family history. My grandfather had built it with his own hands more than 70 years ago, back when this land was nothing but wilderness. He used reclaimed timber from a mill that had gone under, every beam sanded smooth, every nail hammered by hand. I'd spent every summer since I could remember sitting out there, lines dangling lazily in the water, or just lying back and staring up at the sky. But when I reached the shoreline, my stomach dropped. The bridge was gone, not damaged, not washed away, gone. The only things left were jagged pilings sticking up like broken teeth and a few splintered boards floating near the shore. It looked like someone had come in overnight with a crew and ripped out every single piece, leaving behind nothing but wreckage and an eerie quiet. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping my coffee cup until my knuckles turned white, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And then my eyes caught something nailed to a post sticking out of the mud. A laminated sign, bold black letters on neon orange paper. Notice of removal. Unauthorized structure. HOA ordered demolition. And below that, a number to call for further inquiries. I could feel the blood drain from my face. The Homeowners Association, a group of self-important busybodies with too much free time and too much ego, had actually destroyed my bridge. I didn't even live in their jurisdiction. My land wasn't part of their subdivision, and my house, sitting on 40 acres passed down through generations, existed long before their little community even had a name. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number, pacing the shoreline like a storm about to break. Lakewood HOA, a woman's overly cheerful voice answered. "This is Daniel Ward," I said, my voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I'm standing on the shore of my lake, staring at the ruins of my bridge, and I want to know who the hell gave you permission to tear it down." There was a pause, then a small, almost condescending laugh. "Oh, that bridge," she said, her tone dripping with smug superiority. "Yes, well, as per the HOA regulations, unapproved structures are not permitted. It was in violation of community guidelines, so it had to be removed. You're welcome to submit plans for a replacement along with the appropriate fee for review." "Fee?" I echoed, my voice sharp. "Lady, that bridge was there before any of you showed up. You don't own this lake. You don't own this land. And you sure as hell don't have the right to touch my property." "Oh, Mr. Ward," she said sweetly, like she was talking to a child, "we make the rules here. That bridge was an eyesore. Consider this a favor to the neighborhood. You should be thanking us." And then she hung up. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the empty space where my bridge used to be. The audacity of it, the arrogance, settled deep in my chest, burning hotter with every second. They thought they could bulldoze their way into my life, into my land, and get away with it. They thought I was just another one of their submissive homeowners, too scared to fight back, too desperate to keep the peace. What they didn't know, what they never even bothered to find out, was that while they controlled their neat little neighborhood, I controlled something far more important. The dam that fed the lake. The dam my grandfather had built when he bought the land, the same dam that created the lake in the first place. Every dock, every boat launch, every lakefront patio in that community existed because of that dam, because of me. As the sun climbed higher, I walked the length of the shoreline, staring at the water. Boats were tied neatly at the residence docks, shimmering in the light. Kids' toys, inflatable rafts, paddleboards, sat scattered near the waterline. The entire community revolved around this lake. Their million-dollar views, their property values, their precious reputation, it all depended on one thing. And that one thing was mine. I spent the rest of the day in my grandfather's old workshop, pulling out blueprints and maintenance logs, reviewing the controls on the dam, tracing my fingers over the well-worn levers and valves that had been in my family for generations. My grandfather had always said, "Respect the water, son. It gives life, but it can take it away just as fast." By nightfall, I sat by the lake with a single lantern casting light over my notebook. I didn't write much, just enough to sketch out a plan. A simple one. They had taken something from me. Something irreplaceable. And now, it was my turn to take something from them. The next morning, as the mist rolled off the surface of the water and the neighborhood still slept in their perfect little houses, I stood at the dam with a wrench in my hand. The hum of the machinery vibrated through the air, familiar and steady, almost soothing. I hesitated, just for a moment, my hand resting on the main release valve. This was more than revenge, it was a statement. A reminder that some lines aren't meant to be crossed. Then I turned the wrench. The gates groaned, metal grinding against metal, and then the water began to move. At first, it was just a trickle, a steady stream running through the spillways, but within minutes, the current picked up. The lake started to churn, ripples spreading faster and faster until the shoreline shifted. From my vantage point, I could already see the waterline dipping ever so slightly. By the time the sun rose high enough to bathe the lake in light, the first cracks had started to show. The docks, once sitting comfortably above the water, now sagged at odd angles. Boats bobbed awkwardly in the shallows, their keels scraping against the muddy bottom. And I stood there, high on the ridge near the dam, watching the lake I had controlled my entire life slowly drain away. They wanted to play power games. They wanted to remind me who was in charge. They had no idea what they'd started. By noon, chaos had descended on the lakeside community. From my spot on the ridge near the dam, I could see the entire shoreline, or what was left of it. The once pristine waterline had receded by nearly 4 feet, exposing muddy banks and sun-bleached debris that had been hidden beneath the surface for years. Docks sat stranded like skeletons on dry earth, their wooden planks creaking and splintering in the midday heat. Boats, worth more than some people's houses, lay tilted in the mud, propellers snarled with weeds. I could hear shouting echoing across the water. Residents scrambled like ants, waving their arms, gesturing toward the dam. Someone even had binoculars pointed in my direction, but I didn't bother hiding. Let them look. Let them see exactly who held the power. Around 1 p.m., my phone started blowing up. First, it was the HOA president, Karen Daniels herself, her shrill voice crackling over the line. "Mr. Ward," she screeched, "what in God's name are you doing? The lake is dropping, our docks are useless. Boats are getting stuck. Do you have any idea what you're doing to our community?" I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "I know exactly what I'm doing, Karen. You tore down my bridge. My grandfather's bridge. Without my permission, without even talking to me. Consider this my response. That bridge was an eyesore." She snapped. "We were within our rights to." "Your rights." I cut her off, my voice low and sharp. "You don't have rights on my land. This is my lake, my dam, and my water. And right now, you're standing on dry land because you forgot that simple fact." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a flustered, "We'll sue. You can't just drain the lake. You're destroying property values. This is criminal." "You want to talk criminal, Karen? Trespassing, destruction of private property, theft. That's what you did when you tore down my bridge. And if you want to take this to court, I'd be happy to show the judge every deed, every map, every document proving that this lake, and everything connected to it, belongs to me." I hung up before she could sputter another word. By evening, the water had dropped another 2 feet. The once idyllic lake now looked like a graveyard. Fish flopped helplessly in shrinking pools, the smell of mud and algae rising thick in the air. People waded out in rubber boots, trying desperately to push their boats into deeper water, only to watch them sink further into the muck. I couldn't help but smile grimly as I watched the chaos unfold. For years, that HOA had treated me like an outsider, the grumpy old landowner who refused to cooperate with their endless regulations and fees. They'd tried to fine me for leaving my tractor parked near the road. They'd complained when I refused to trim the wild oaks that grew along the shoreline. They'd even attempted to claim a strip of my land to build a community walking path, as if my property existed solely for their convenience. But this time, they'd crossed the line. And now they were learning what it meant to pick a fight with someone who didn't play by their rules. By the second day, the situation had escalated to full-blown panic. Contractors were called in to assess the damage, but there wasn't much they could do. Without water, the docks were collapsing, the supports cracking under their own weight. Jet skis and speedboats sat marooned in the mud, their shiny hulls baking in the sun. The HOA board set up an emergency meeting in the clubhouse, desperate to figure out how to negotiate with me. I didn't attend. Instead, I sat in my grandfather's old rocking chair on the porch, sipping iced tea, and waited. By the third day, the dam's phone line was ringing non-stop. Residents, realtors, even the county commissioner called, pleading for me to be reasonable. They offered money. They offered apologies. One man even showed up at my gate with a fruit basket, stammering about how it had all been a misunderstanding. I didn't budge, because it wasn't about the bridge anymore. Not really. This was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. That evening, Karen herself showed up. Her immaculate bob was frizzed from the humidity, and she was wearing expensive shoes that were now caked in mud. She banged on my door like she owned the place until I opened it. "Mr. Ward," she said, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "We need to talk. This situation has gotten out of hand. The board and I are prepared to make amends for the misunderstanding regarding your bridge." "Misunderstanding?" I raised an eyebrow. "You had my bridge destroyed, Karen. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was deliberate. She flushed but kept her composure. Fine. It was a mistake. And we're willing to rebuild it, better than before. Whatever you want, just stop draining the lake. Please. Do you have any idea how much money we're losing? Boats, docks, property values, we're talking millions, Mr. Ward. Millions. I leaned against the doorframe, letting her words hang in the humid evening air. Money isn't what I want, I said finally. What I want is for you and your HOA to stay off my land. No more rules. No more demands. No more trespassing. You keep to your side, and I'll keep to mine. Understood. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Understood. Good, I said, and started to close the door before pausing. Oh, and Karen. That dam, the one you've been staring at like it's your lifeline. It is. Remember that next time you think about crossing me. She left without another word, her shoes squelching in the mud as she trudged back to her car. By the end of the week, the lake was little more than a series of shallow pools, the once glittering surface reduced to cracked earth and scattered puddles. The neighborhood looked like a war zone, docks collapsed, boats ruined, angry residents glaring at one another as they tried to make sense of their new reality. And then, slowly, word started to spread. About me, about the dam, about how everything they'd built, everything they valued, depended on the man they'd spent years antagonizing. By the time I closed the gates and let the water start to rise again, the message had been received loud and clear. The bridge was gone, but in its place, I'd built something far stronger, leverage. From that day forward, there were no more friendly visits from HOA board members, no more complaints about the tractor or the oaks or the fact that I didn't mow the wildflowers by the road. My land was my land again, and they knew better than to cross the man who held the key to their precious lake.